Well, a very good, warm afternoon to everybody that is watching. We're back again on another Thursday, exciting Thursday, I must say, with very special guests in studio. Today, we're joined by learners from Hage Ginkop Secondary School as well as Eshipena here to discuss a very important issue. Now, we've all seen and heard of the discussion of the sale of the Erindi Game Reserve that is ongoing. And today, we're going to hear arguments from the very mouths of our young scholars here locally in Windhoek. Now, without further ado, we have a debate today which reads, this House supports the sale of the Erindi Game Reserve to foreign investors. And not to bore you with all of that, but in-house we have a timekeeper, so if you hear clapping in the house, do not be alarmed. It is, of course, our timekeeper alarming and informing the speakers as to how much time they have left to speak. So at 1 minute, you're going to hear one clap. That means POIs are open. Now, for those of you who do not know what a POI is, that is when another speaker interjects, when somebody is at the podium to give either a point of correction or to pose a question to the speaker. And at 6 minutes, you're going to hear another clap. That means POIs are closed, so no more interjections. And at 7 minutes, that's a double clap, informing the speaker to round up their argument. And at 8 minutes exactly, you're going to hear like continuous clapping, of course, which informs the speaker that their time is up. So without bothering you with all the technical stuff, I'm sure you're eager to hear what these youngsters have to say, because I know I am, so do stay tuned.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would want to tell you what's happening currently. I go by the name of Victor, first speaker of Team Proposition. Firstly, ladies and gentlemen, we have to know that Erindi has been on the market for 5 years. And that basically means anybody could have bid for this. The government did bid for it and then withdraw their bid. Why? Ladies and gentlemen, there's a scarcity of water in the Erindi Game Park, firstly. And on top of that, we feel that the government, even after they buy this place, cannot cater to it as much as private investors would then do, foreign investors would do. So basically, what are we saying? It's better to sell this to a foreign investor than sell it to the government. Why? Firstly, look at the foreign currency, ladies and gentlemen. What are the benefits that come with foreign currency? It's more when we sell Erindi, that means we're going to get foreign currency because the person that's buying is foreign. That means when this currency is converted to our Namibian dollars, we'll then have more money compared to what that person had in their country. Why is this important? It's no longer much of a burden to the government that they have to cater and take care of this place because it's already being catered for by a private individual. That basically means the government doesn't have to ensure that the people there are fine or whatsoever, that because there's a mechanism in place for this, and the government doesn't have to release funds for any projects or whatever renovations that to be made on this place, but then the individual that owns the property is responsible for that. Now listen, my second speaker will then tell you of all the benefits that come with private employment of the people that are going to be employed there. Now, why is it beneficial for us to sell this? Firstly, this person is going to be paying tax. That means the government is now then the government is now earning an income, and with this we can then have better infrastructures in Namibia and all that. And then on top of that, we then tell you, even if this person doesn't take care of this place as much as they could do, it's no longer the government's problem because now the government is out of it. We've made what we wanted with this, and then this person is now responsible for this. That means if this person is in a poor condition, it's him suffering and not the government, and the government doesn't have to be associated with this. Now, ladies and gentlemen, why is it a problem when the government buys this? We then tell you that the government won't offer the best of the best care to this place, and it will put a strain on the government because basically the government would then have to fund the running and administration and all that is needed for this place. We then feel that it's a burden to our government with all the financial crisis that we are already having, that you have to add on this, because if the government can afford this, I already showed you how they cannot maintain the place, and even if they could, how better off the place is with a foreign investor. Listen, we then burden Team Opposition to telling us how this is not a problem to the Namibian economy and how it generates more income if it belongs to the government rather than when it is to the foreign investors. How is this beneficial to the Namibians if this is owned by the Namibian government? I've already shown you how it's beneficial to the country when it's by a foreign individual. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chair, if you are in a position to cripple your country even worse than it already is, would you do it, and why would you do it, right? We see that this is something that Team Proposition is trying to do, but technically we have picked up a big problem solution mismatch in the first speaker's case, right? So this is the problem, right? Namibia is financially depressed and everything, right? And their solution is to sell Erindi Game Park. Why do we see that that isn't a valid solution, right? We see that the fact that Erindi Game Park is already a privately owned game park. If these people have to sell it, the money isn't gonna go to the government, but it's gonna go to the owner of this place, right? And regardless of whether the government is, or regardless of whether they are gonna make this foreigner pay tax, right? We see that it doesn't equate to the money that is going to go to this person, this individual Namibian that already sold this money, right? So Namibia being broke and everything, where the moment they sell Erindi Game Park, that won't make a difference because it's going to go to this private owner rather than going to the country itself, right? So apparently our burden to prove was how it's gonna benefit Namibia, right, if we don't sell it, and I'll get there later. Right? So Mr. Chair, moving into my first argument, which is keeping our heritage, right? Mr. Chair, we have to understand that African land should be controlled by African people. Why? We see that heritage and culture, especially in Africa, right, is something that makes us different and is something that makes us unique, right, Mr. Chair? The reason that we have to keep our cultures, respect our cultures, and keep our land, right, as African people is for us to generally show and prove to the world how good we are in fighting for what belongs to us, right? But another importance is that it's also good for international relations, Mr. Chair. We do not have to sell our things to foreigners because it will then lead to neo-colonialism, which I'm getting into right now, right? My second argument, which is neo-colonialism, right? We see that this will generally just be colonialism repeating itself in the modern world, and it will be repeating itself through land grabbing, right? Regardless of whether these foreigners are going to pay for this place, right? We see that it will still promote neo-colonialism because they can decide to continue buying more land due to the fact that they see our depression, right, Mr. Chair? And foreigners are very good manipulators. They will manipulate us and they will exploit us, Mr. Chair. They see our state of depression. They see us as being so financially broke and will fall into any trap, Mr. Chair. That's what a foreigner is, right? They will try to manipulate us to our weakest point. Who knows for how much an American or a Chinese will want to buy that place from a Namibian with less education, Mr. Chair. This is something that we have to understand. We see that our land will be exploited. It will lead to neo-colonialism through foreigners can just decide to come and buy our land. Any place that they see is up for offer for 5 years or whatever, they'll just decide to buy it, right? And we see that this is a problem, Mr. Chair, due to the fact that Africans have already been through colonialism and we generally don't want it happening again, right? What is the truth in this, right? We see that it will promote neo-colonialism, right? Because, Shandiki, our land is being taken from us. Regardless of whether we're paying money for it, regardless of whether they are paying money for it, the fact remains that African land is being taken away from Africans. And this land will be under African control, right? The point that Victor comes and talk about when he says we shouldn't care about what they are gonna do to the land, right? We see that Victor isn't a true African because he doesn't care about foreigners exploiting their land and everything, and this is a problem that we see in today's debate, right? So we do not support the sale of Erindi Game Park, right? Due to the fact that I've already told you that this money won't go to the government like Team Proposition wants it to, that rather it will just go to this privately owned person, right? So what have I told you in today's debate, right? I've told you that how it will promote neo-colonialism and how it is important to keep our heritage. And I've also pointed out the problem-solution mismatch in Team Proposition's case that they still have to come clarify with their second speaker. With that, I beg to oppose.
I'm the first speaker from, I'm the second speaker from Team Proposition, and I'm Martha Vaniga. Okay, firstly we gotta look at the reality of Namibia. Actually, they in the parliament they took a decision that yes, they are ready to sell Erindi to foreign investors. Okay, so going on to my response. Okay, first speaker from Team Opposition comes up here and telling us that. Telling us of keeping our heritage. Okay, these people only value the culture over the economy. And she also comes up and talk about colonialism. The people that are buying Erindi are only coming here for business, and which I'm going to respond more on during my argumentation. Moving on to my first my argument, which is employment. Okay, firstly, when we sell Erindi to this foreign investor, he actually gets to employ more people to work for him. People, okay, we have people that were working in Erindi, but now they're on the streets. Why? Because of what Victor mentioned, the water problem. He mentioned it, and people and the owner of Erindi cannot sustain Erindi nicely. That's why we as Team Proposition prefer to sell it to foreign investors. Okay, and then what are the benefits that come with employment? Okay, we have better living standards. When a person is employed, they get when this foreign investor employs a person, they will earn something for themselves, and then with this poverty is eradicated, we won't have people suffering on the street. You won't have people suffering on streets just because they have they are jobless and all that. And then also they will be paying tax. When when a person is they are employed, now they will be paying tax to the government, or not taken. The people that are employed will although Erindi is a private game reserve, the people that will be working in Erindi will be paying tax to the government as the ones that do it usually. Since the number of people that are working they increased, the tax will also increase, and with this tax we can use it to build infrastructures, new schools, and also develop our country. Also fix the water that is in Erindi. We can drain water from underground and make it useful and be productive with the tax that the people are paying. Okay, now now the people people already took decisions that they're going to sell Erindi to foreign investors. So so since the decision is already taken in the parliament, it's a reality. It's a reality we have. Okay, we are Erindi has been on sale for 5 years. Now the Mexican billionaire Alberto, who is willing to buy Erindi for $2 billion Namibian dollars, said he will be working in partnership with the Namibian people, which actually meaning he will employ some of the Namibian people and also help them develop now the Erindi Game Reserve. With that, I'm proud to propose.
Ladies and gentlemen, you could be Superman, you could be the richest guy on earth. Your money does not have any effect on climatic problems that Namibia is facing. We feel that if there's a water crisis within Namibia or within a particular game reserve, you're not going to solve it by having more money at the end of the day. Because if money accessibility is the problem, then money is not going to solve that at the end of the day. Further than that, ladies and gentlemen, we feel that Africa within itself is different and unique because of its heritage and its culture. We feel that those are things that we should preserve as Africans and as Namibians in particular, in general, specific at the end of the day. Because these are things that not only give us Namibians identity and a difference between any other person from any other country, but it's also it's also a thing that gives us pride and some sort of drive to become the best that we can according to our culture and our heritage. We feel that selling things that have such major impact on our heritage and our culture have negative influence on society and government in general, and I'll get deeper into that. Now, first of all, let's quickly get into the first speaker's case. First speaker comes up here and tells us that first of all, there's a water crisis within this particular Erindi Park. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, we feel there's not a problem to change the system of governance within that game park. We feel that that's not something equatable so that we can lose so much money that we could potentially gain from this particular game park at the end of the day. We feel that if every particular country, the rest of the country within Namibia is under a water crisis right now, there's drought, ladies and gentlemen, but yet people aren't giving up their land, and we feel that is the same thing that should happen within this particular game park. Secondly, ladies and gentlemen, we feel that, yeah, water crisis, as I said within my opening statement, the water crisis is not going to be solved by the fact that the owner is now a foreigner at the end of the day. Secondly, he talks about how it's no longer government's burden at the end of the day. First of all, we feel that this never was government's burden in the first place. It was this private owner's burden at the end of the day to ensure that his services within this particular game reserve were up to standard at the end of the day. So regardless of the fact if you sell it or you keep it, it has no influence on government whatsoever. So even if even this solution of you telling us the economy is going to get better, that's a completely blatant lie, because that's not going to happen. The money is going straight to this guy, and even if he gives tax, this tax is not equatable to the money that this person has at the end of the day. No. Now, let's quickly get into the second speaker's speech. Second speaker talks about how the parliament already decides to sell it. First of all, this is a lie, because Parliament has no effect on what happens to the game reserve. As I said, countless, as we as proposition have said so many times, that the owner is private owned, so Parliament can decide what happens with that. But even if Parliament did decide what happened with that particular instance, we feel that the debate is about justifying whether or not it was just for us to sell that particular instance, and not whether or not the Parliament has sold it in the first place. Let's really get into employment. It talks about how it creates employment in this kind of things. The person is let's quickly ask you as a human being of human nature. You're a person who yourself want to employ your own fellow nationalist people, your own fellow Mexicans or whoever you are. Would you rather employ people from another country when you own that particular business, or would you employ people from your own country to uplift your economy and to uplift your people, to uplift your country at the end of the day? We feel that is the more rational thing that a human being is more likely to do at the end of the day. And even in the instance where this particular Mexican still decides, or this particular person still decides this particular person still decides to employ Namibians, we feel this is the notion of colonialism still exists at the end of the day, because it's a foreigner who owns this particular thing. Now, there is no problem with foreigners owning land within our particular country, but we feel that it's wrong when it has major heritage and cultural effect on Namibian people. And we also feel that it's a major problem now, because within land grabbing and these kind of things, where a lot of our land is being sold to foreigners, we feel it's a major problem at the end of the day. So this person also talks about how tax. We feel that, first of all, this is a low income and something that's very low to depend selling such a billion-dollar enterprise, right? We feel that that is such a low amount of income at the end of the day. And secondly, we feel that with the idea of corrupt politicians, this money is going to get eaten up anyway within that instance. We feel this is something that is problematic within this instance, and let's just agree to that. Also talks about how this man is going to working in partnership with Namibians or with these particular people. We feel that this is just his word, and this is not something that is written in black and blue or black and white, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, and therefore we can't depend on that, and we feel that still the notion still exists. Let's quickly get into case defense. What does Mariana tell you within today's debate? She tells you that, first of all, a foreigner, this particular foreigner, is a person who wants to take advantage of our crisis and takes advantage of our dependency on the rest of the world. Secondly, he wants to take advantage. Secondly, this is a person who's profit-driven and money-driven, and therefore we feel this is something that is problematic within itself. Now, also talks about heritage, where she talks about how you have to keep your heritage in order to identify yourself as a human being, and she talks about neocolonialism, how taking over our resources is a bad thing. Now, my argument in today's debate. My argument is that, first of all, foreign hegemonic influence. We feel that foreign hegemonic influence is when foreigners have major influence on our particular economies. Why is this true? This is true because, first of all, they own a major land they own major land that has major economical effect on our economy. And then secondly, ladies and gentlemen, they own so many things in this particular instance. Another thing within today's debate is that you allow for further infringement of the minority. Now, when you look at the same people who are people who decide not to live in the modern world, these are people who usually live on game reserves, and as it is, these people are already infringed within our societies. You allow for foreigners then to take control of these particular people and further infringe these people as they have control over this particular instance. We feel that is a bad thing, and that is something that should not happen as we are within a modern world. We also have a dysfunctional game reserve because first of all, ladies and gentlemen, this is a profit-driven particular thing. At the end of the day, this person is more likely to cut on the workforce, on this kind of things, because first of all, this person lost $200 billion on buying this particular thing. At the end of the day, is willing to come to take out to get a profit at the end of the day with a water crisis that you also outlined at the end of the day. We feel that is something that's majorly important and problematic within today's debate. It should never be taken not into consideration when making such things. So whether it's justifiable or not, we feel it's not justifiable because of four things. Giving over our heritage and our culture, because of foreign hegemonic influence, because of neocolonialism, and because of further infringement of minority. We feel that Erindi Game Reserve should never be sold to foreigners because of those four reasons. Thank you.
One question to side opposition. Would you buy a car and park it at your house because you cannot maintain it after that? Okay, that's the case we have here. They want to buy a Erindi, but they are not going to maintain it afterwards. Okay, so that's the case we have currently. Now moving in with me, my response. Okay, what do we get from the first speaker? Basically get this thing of heritage and how important keeping our heritage is. Okay. So basically, we need to understand that team opposition only value the cultural values rather than the country's economy. Okay, we need to understand the importance that comes with selling Erindi. Okay, not selling Erindi to a foreign investor. Okay, up to now, side opposition have not told us what should we do. They just came up here, told us why we should not sell Erindi to a foreign investor. Nothing else. They didn't tell us, no, we are going to do this and do this. Nothing. So we basically think that they are still okay with us selling Erindi to a foreign investor. And one thing I want to outline is, why are they making a big deal about Erindi being sold to a private investor if Erindi is currently being owned by a private investor? Okay, the government is not owning it. So why are they making a big deal out of it just now? Why not later ago? And as Martha said, Erindi is currently closed because the owner of Erindi currently cannot sustain it. So how is the government going to sustain it also itself? So we rather give it to someone, we rather sell it to someone that's sure they're going to sustain it, someone that's sure that with Erindi, I'm going to make something productive out of it. Okay, so then, we also get this thing of neocolonialism. Basically, when we are foreigners in the country, that's a big fat lie. Okay, because we then need to understand that the moment these people have the mindset of white people or foreigners into our country is because of colonialism, then they are lying. Okay, there are some fields that we don't have people that are from Africa that can do the jobs that Europeans can do. So we need to accept it. We need to acknowledge what he's coming to do. Okay, his job that he's coming to do is very important, and we need to respect it. Okay. And then we also move into Lotto's speech. Okay, Lotto then talks about foreign money influence. Okay, and then we need to understand what these people is gonna do. I cannot continue emphasizing on the thing that the foreign investors are gonna do and the mindset they have. Okay, and then we move. Within Lotto's speech, he then talks about how the indigenous people are neglected. There were no people in that area. There were no indigenous people in that area. Okay, it's the people that we are gonna employ are the people of that surrounding area. Those are the people we are gonna bring back to the society, to the Erindi. Current people are sent back home because there's no job for them. That's another burden on the government. When these people go, they don't go knocking at the private companies' doors. They knock at the government doors. We want jobs. But now this guy comes with the hope of giving these people jobs. So it basically limits what? It takes problems away from the government. Okay, so what have we told you within today's debate? A side proposition. We then told you the scarcity of water. Basically, okay, quickly.
So, do you concede to the fact that when somebody has major control on your economy, then that means that they also have control on what happens within the particular country?
Look here, Lotto. The person owning Erindi is not as if he's owning the whole Namibia. Okay, all they're gonna do is pay tax. Okay, now the tax they're gonna get is, it's even tax on two occasions. It's him himself paying tax as a business, and then the workers he employed are also gonna pay tax. So this is double shift, Lotto. Now when you talk about talk about your PRI, Lotto, we then talked about that this guy contributes to it and he doesn't have control over it. Like we said, there are rules and regulations that in place, and there are organizations that make sure that workers' rights are not infringed. Okay, we then see how important that is within these foreign investors. So these rules only apply to all of us, everyone, be it if you are public owned, be it if you are private owned. Okay, and then we then talked about how foreign currency is then important, how it's gonna earn money within our country, and with what I just answered Lotto's POI, how we then use the foreign currency to develop our country, and how the tax paid by these people employed, which is again a double shift benefit of employing people and then these people paying tax basically. So this is a double shift and we need to acknowledge this person doing this, because we need to basically understand what the role of what this guy, the Mexican guy, wants to do, and the role what some companies are doing. When you see these construction tenders that these Chinese are getting, those guys come with their own workers from China to come build here. We have builders here that are on the street, but this guy is coming here, but he's only coming to employ people and not come with Mexican, because I'm sure there are people in Mexico that do not have jobs, but this guy is coming alone with his money to buy and then employ people. Okay, so basically what do we then hear from Victor? Okay, we hear from Victor how foreign currency is important within today's case. Okay, within today's case. From Martha is how this guy is going to reduce employment. Okay, so now moving back to what Lotto just said. Lotto came up here, talked about corruption. Okay, how it's corrupt, how this tax that these people are going to pay is going to end up in bad hands. We then tell you that even if the government buys it, it's still going to end up into corrupt hands, okay? Because with the government, everything is corruption. Our minister of education just resigned. Who knows why? We don't know. Okay, so basically we then talked about all these things. So basically with Lotto then talking about, saying money is gonna end up into bad hands. Even if government gets Erindi, it's still gonna end up into bad hands. With that, I'd love to propose.
Mr. Speaker, we have to understand that Erindi Game Reserve is actually privately owned. So basically they talk about tax, which basically is not significant within today's debate, because this actually does not benefit the government because it's privately owned, and this actually goes to the man standing on the ground, which is the person who owns this Erindi Game Reserve. So let's look at the core clashes within today's debate. Firstly, we have the government benefits versus the government does not. We tell you how the government does not benefit because this is a privately owned game reserve, and that is what we should understand within today's debate. So they tell us about tax, and this is not actually reasonable because the government does not gain anything because this is privately owned. That is what we should understand, which has been going out through my first speaker and my second speaker's case. Second clash, right? We have maintenance versus heritage culture. We tell you of how actually we should keep our heritage and how we should keep our culture. We tell you of how that is actually very significant, and that is going out through our entire debate. Hold on. They tell us about how we cannot maintain the game reserve, and that's why we have to give it to a foreign currency. We've told you of how this we basically take this because we tell you of how heritage is important, and they don't actually tell us of why actually maintenance is a problem, and that is what we bring to today's debate. So second, okay, so moving on to a comparative analysis of actually what happened within today's debate. They tell us about how this actually benefits the foreign currency, right? How there are benefits of foreign currency and how foreigners actually pay tax and all that, right? We tell you of how actually there's no benefit to foreign currency, right? Because basically we have how this is a private sector, and later on there's no benefit to the government, and that is what we should understand within today's debate. We also told you of how there's actually colonialism, which actually repeats itself, which is basically colonialism repeating itself, and that is what we should understand of foreign investors within today's debate.
Alia, quickly.
So they also told us about how there are less resources within the Erindi Game Reserve, or how there's actually no water. We tell you that this is actually not beneficial to actually want to give this to foreign investors, right? Because there's no benefit to this. And as Lotto said, there's actually how foreigners have major influence on this, right, within today's debate. So they also told us about how government will have a strain, right? How the government will have a strain because they cannot actually sustain this Erindi Game Reserve. We've told you that already, that having foreign currency is actually not beneficial, because we see that foreigners actually when they pay tax, it's actually not reasonable because the government gains nothing at all. And how we should actually keep our heritage, how colonialism how colonialism repeats itself. So this is actually where land sovereignty actually puts itself in, right? This is actually very significant. This is actually how Africa should actually control how Namibia should actually control that which is theirs, right? Which is their land. How Namibia is actually supposed to control it, right? We told you of how actually foreigners actually how they actually have a major influence, and there's a major infringe on the minority groups, which Lotto has given you example of how people who live there, then their lives are at stake, because then these foreigners have control over this entire place, and there's no such thing as foreigners who want to hire people from that specific country, because from that specific country, which Lotto has already said within his speech. So let's just move on. Let's move on to what we've actually told you within today's debate. So we've told you about how we actually have to keep our heritage and how land of Africa is supposed to be for Africans, how we should be able to control. So basically we've told you of how actually when foreign investors actually buy this Erindi, let's buy this Erindi Game Reserve, we then have a problem of how Africans are not actually able to control their own land, which is actually what they're supposed to do. And then we also told you of how actually colonialism repeats itself through land grabbing, right? We also told you of how actually Namibians won't have control over their land, which is basically how land is under foreign control, right? Because these foreigners will know, because when these foreign investors buy it, then later on everything is theirs then. There's no control of Namibians within this, right? We also told you of how there's no land sovereignty, right? We have to have land sovereignty within this instance. Basically, land sovereignty is how Namibians actually able to control their land themselves, right? So we've also told you about how foreigners have major influence. We've also told you about how there's a major infringement on minority groups, which is a basic problem within today's debate. So the third speaker tells us about a burden that we're supposed to prove, but we tell you of how actually our burden is to tell you of why this is actually, how it is actually unjustifiable. So basically his burden that we are supposed to, the burden he put actually that we're supposed to prove actually not what we're supposed to prove. So what have we told you within today's entire debate? We've told you about how we should keep our heritage, how we should keep our heritage for the future generation, right? We've told you about how colonialism repeats itself, how important land sovereignty is, and how foreigners have a major influence, right? We've also told you about how this actually has no benefit because the government gains nothing. They tell us about tax, which basically just falls flat because this actually does not exist because it's a privately owned sector, and that is what Lotto and Mariana have been saying within today's debate. With that, I back to oppose.
All right, well, welcome back. That was just, a quick break. You know how they say we're taking a commercial break? That was a commercial break for us. It was just a little bit of time for adjudicators to discuss and speak amongst themselves as to who they feel deserves to walk away as the winner of this very debate. Now, I had my opinion on this topic, but now I'm not so sure anymore because these youngsters came here and just completely changed my mind about what I believe in. So here's Donald, who is one of the adjudicators, here to give us feedback as to who took this debate. You can, of course, leave in the comments for us who you feel was a worthy winner, but here's what it is. Donald?
All right. Firstly, I want to know, what is your opinion on the issue?
As I said, I don't know anymore, so I must go sit down and reanalyze my life.
I want to know, what is your opinion? Without them vitiating your opinion, what's your opinion?
In my opinion, I feel although they say it's ancestral land and it's, special, but at the end of the day, if you have the land, what are you doing with it?
Yeah.
Know what I mean?
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, that might also contribute to the rankings as well. It was quite a difficult debate so far, and it was quite difficult for us to choose who the winner is, because the main arguments that came in, three main arguments that came in, or issues that came in, is the economic gain to the country as well, and as well as the heritage, as well as neo-colonialism. Before we touch on the economic gain, what we get from, and mostly we get from heritage and neo-colonialism, those principles, what we get mostly from side opposition, and they keep telling us that, okay, Africans should control African land because this is what's good for them and they know how to best control this land and, do what with it. It's good for international relations because they are controlling what's theirs and, just the thing of owning what's yours as well. So in terms of neo-colonialism, we are told that foreigners come in and they come rule over Africa and, not Africa, but like Namibia. So it won't just come with them buying this land, but it will also come with them buying bits and pieces of land. And when they do control this land, they also control some part or major parts of the economy. Also, which is also something that we accredited to this side, or we say that they won those two arguments. But with those two arguments that they won, we had to look at the better picture, or the picture that was intended, or that the government, which is this side of the house, side proposition, wants to paint. Firstly, they tell us that no, this land has been out there for 5 whole years. Nobody was using it. If we're going to sell it, we need to sell it to someone that's going to better use it, put better use to it, which means that they're going to come renovate it, put boreholes in it, get the equipment that's needed for that, someone that has the equipment for this land, and also employ people while doing so as well. So in doing so, we look at the economical benefit, which means that they're going to pay tax from the profits that they make. And also when they do pay tax, they're also going to employ people that will also pay tax, which also sort of increase the GDP of our country. What we get from this side of the house on that argument on its own is that they tell us that most of the profits will be going to the foreigners and not the Namibian government, and also this tax in itself is less than the profits that are made. However, we did not get from this side of the house as to how, like the opposition bench, how on an economic gain, or how the country will gain economically if we do keep this land from foreigners. Also, what we would have liked from this side of the house to prove, the opposition house to prove, is that no, Namibian is in the best position to own that land, which is on the basis, because those two arguments, apart from the economic gain, we think that the economic gain was won specifically by proposition government bench, and we do not necessarily think that heritage and neo-colonialism were strong arguments as to what will benefit Namibia mostly, and we had to outweigh the neo-colonialism argument that they had as well as the heritage argument. Are we going to let people suffer while we're trying to preserve our heritage? Which is why we give the debate to House government, simply because of the fact that they had a picture as to where they want the country to go in terms of economic gain. Also, the analogy that was given there, you don't want to buy a car and just leave it there.
Exactly.
I mean, you need to put it in a cab and generate some income or whatsoever, which is one of the things that stood out for us. So it was a really below average debate. Only one speaker made it a bit above average. The best speaker for this debate is the second speaker of opposition. So you didn't quite lose all the way, eh?
Well done, well done. And that was, of course, very well said. It would have been difficult for me to be in that seat. So thank you, Donald, for delivering that very informative elaboration. So thank you most especially for joining us. In case you missed the debate, it's going to be on our Facebook Live. And tell a friend to tell a friend. You might just learn something new. So join us again next time. It's again Straight Talk, where we bring you you. Of course, a debate from local high schools regarding social, economic, and of course, trending issues in the country.